Hello, and welcome back to the Podcasting Problem Solver. I'm Leah Bryant, your go-to podcast growth strategist, and I'm here to help you stop treating your podcast like a hobby and start using it as the strategic lead gen tool it should be. So you've been podcasting for a while now, and your downloads are decent, maybe not viral, but they're respectable. Your content is genuinely good. You've gotten the DMs of people telling you that they love the show, and yet no one's booking calls or buying anything from you. And you're sitting there wondering if you're just supposed to keep creating content in these empty internet streets and hope something eventually sticks. And let me tell you, I hear this all the time in my DMs and in conversations that I'm having. And when someone comes to me with this very problem, my first instinct, thanks to that wonderful background and fraud investigation, is to look at the evidence, right? Because what I know after auditing dozens of shows is that the problem almost never lives where the podcaster thinks it does. So today we are going forensic. We're going to look at your podcast the way that I would. And I'm going to show you exactly what I find when a show has decent downloads but zero conversions. And by the end of this episode, you'll be able to audit your own show for conversion intent, identify the 3 silent killers hiding in plain sight, and know whether your podcast is built to grow your business or just built to grow an audience. And those are 2 very different things. And the gap that's between them, well, that's where most podcasters get stuck. So let me paint a pretty picture for you. You start a podcast because you want to attract clients, right? We've all been there. You've heard all the things. Podcasting builds trust. It positions you as an authority. It's the long game. So you commit. You show up consistently and you create genuinely valuable content. And then, in 6 months, you've got listeners, but no leads. So what do? Well, you do what most people do. You assume the content needs to be better. It needs to be more valuable, more polished, all the things, right? So you spend more time on production, you get a better mic, you do more research. Maybe you even double down on content. But here's the thing. More content is never the answer when the foundation has a problem. That's like investigating a fraud case and deciding to collect more of the same evidence that's already not telling you anything, right? At some point, you have to stop and ask, am I looking in the right place? The disconnect between great content and actual conversions is always a positioning and purpose problem. This is because your podcast is set up to entertain and less as to convert. And those 2 setups look almost identical on the surface, which is why this is so hard to spot from the inside. So here's a distinction I want you to sit with for a second. A podcast built to grow an audience, it optimizes for downloads, listens, and shares. It creates content people enjoy, right? It makes listeners feel good. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if your goal is to grow your business, enjoyment alone won't pay your bills. Yes, I said it. Enjoyment alone will not pay your bills, friends. A podcast built to grow a client pipeline does something different. Okay, so every episode has a job. The content isn't just valuable, right? It all has a purpose. It's designed to move your listener, a very specific listener, mind you, through a very specific journey toward a very specific decision. See the difference? One is kind of like broadcasting it, and the other is a very strategic communication tool. And when I audit a show, the first thing I'm looking for is the intent. Not the quality, but the intent. What is this episode really trying to accomplish? Who is it for specifically? And does it create a natural path to the host offer? Because most of the time, the answer is, not really. Which brings me to the 3 silent conversion killers I find over and over again. These aren't obvious mistakes. They're really subtle. They're hiding in plain sight, and they're absolutely costing you clients. And I'm going to share this with you today. Number 1, you're speaking to everyone, which means that's right, you're connecting to absolutely nobody. And this is the big one. When I pull up a show and listen to the first 2 minutes of about 3 different episodes, I can usually tell within that window whether the host knows exactly who they're talking to or whether they're kind of hoping the right person is listening. Because vague content will create vague results. If your episode could apply to any entrepreneur at any stage with any kind of business, they're probably not landing with anyone deeply enough to make them want to take action, right? Specificity is what creates the, oh my gosh, she's talking to me moment. And that moment, friend, that's what drives conversions. All right, number 2, your calls to action are an afterthought. Oh, goodness. This one gets me. It really breaks my heart because most podcasters drop one small call to action at the very end of an episode after the listener has already mentally checked out and started thinking about what's for dinner. Or they mention an offer so briefly and apologetically that it barely registers. So here's what I teach my clients. Your call to action placement should be strategic. And you should have more than one per episode. A good rule of thumb is roughly 1 call to action per 5 to 7 minutes of content. And those call to actions should feel earned, like a natural next step after what you just taught, okay? So if you're teaching something and the listener thinks, okay, but how do I actually do this? Well, that's your moment. That's when you put your call to action there because you're going to meet them there, right? Number 3, your episodes don't have a clear conversion job. No. So every episode in a strategically built podcast has a role to play. Some episodes are top of funnel. They're designed to attract a new listener, get shared, rank in search, all that good stuff. And some are mid funnel. They build the trust. They deepen the relationship with people who already know you. And some episodes are bottom of funnel. They're specifically designed to move warm listeners toward a decision. So most podcasters are creating almost exclusively top of funnel content without even realizing it because it feels safe and it feels valuable. I get it. Totally get it. Been there, done that. But it leaves the listener with nowhere to go. We're like, what do we do next? Been there, done that too, right? And here's the thing. When every episode is trying to attract strangers, you're neglecting the people who've been listening for months and who are really ready to work with you. So let me tell you about Jackie. Jackie came to me with a podcast she'd been running about a year. Solid download numbers, great retention, genuinely excellent content. Her niche was business strategy for online coaches. And she knew her stuff from the inside out. Brilliant woman. Her name has been changed, by the way. But she was getting 0 inquiries from our podcast. 0. Zilch. None. I mean, the occasional love your show DM, right? But nothing was turning into a conversation, let alone a client. And when I did her audit, I found all 3 killers I just described. Her content was broad enough to apply to any business owner. Her call to actions were at the very end of the episode and felt almost reluctant, like she was apologizing for even having an offer. Like, how dare she? And every single episode was essentially a standalone educational place with no thread pulling listeners toward the next step. So here's what I had her change. First, we narrowed her audience's language significantly. Instead of online business owners, her episodes began speaking directly to coaches who had moved past the beginner stage and were trying to scale without the burnout. Instantly more specific. Instantly more magnetic. See? Second, we went back through her top 10 episodes and restructured the call to actions. So moving them to natural teaching moments, making them conversational, and making them feel like a logical continuation of the lesson. Third, we mapped out a simple content mix so that roughly a third of her episodes were designed to convert warm listeners, not just attract all the new ones. And within 6 weeks, she had 3 discovery calls booked from the podcast. 2 of them converted. Yep. And that wasn't a content quality overhaul, right? She didn't record a single new episode for the first month of that process. It was purely strategy and positioning shift. Yep. And that is why my seamless podcast framework is so important. And that's it in action. Specifically, the strategy and attraction phases working together. Because you can have the most beautifully executed podcast in the world, but if the strategy underneath it isn't pointed at conversion, the effort does not compound the way that it should. So here is your homework, friend. Yes, you know I'm going to give you homework because I believe in you. I know you are doing awesome things and I want to see you succeed. Ready? You have your pen and paper? Okay. So I want you to pull up your last 5 episodes and ask yourself these questions. 1, who is this episode for? Specifically. Not generally, specifically. If you can't name a specific listener, situation, or problem, the episode is too broad. Okay? Number 2, where are my call to actions? And are they earning their placement? Are they showing up at a natural moment where the listener is primed to take action? Or are you speedrunning them at the end? Number 3, what is the conversion job of this episode? Is it meant to attract a new listener, build trust with an existing one, or move warm listeners toward a decision? If you don't know, that is your clue. You don't need to overhaul everything at once, and I don't want you to. No. Start with 1 episode. Identify 1 gap. Make 1 change. That is how sustainable momentum builds, okay? Small, strategic shifts that compound over time. This episode lives squarely, like I said, in the strategy phase of my seamless podcast framework. Because before you can optimize your execution, before you can work on attraction or momentum, you have to know what you're building toward. A podcast without a conversion strategy isn't a business asset. It's really an expensive hobby. You didn't start this to have a hobby. Nope. I know you. You started this to grow something and to leave a legacy. The good news is that the fix is almost always simpler than people expect. You don't need to start over. You don't need to burn it to the ground. You don't need to re-record everything. I will take that much from you, friend. Thank you very much. You need clarity on your purpose, your listener, and your path to conversion. And once you have that, everything else gets easier. Now, if you're listening to this and thinking, Leah, gosh, I know something is off, but I genuinely cannot see it from the inside. Well, you are not imagining it. And you don't have to keep guessing because I am building something brand spanking new. I am so stinking excited. It is a group program called Positioned and Found. And I'm opening a small beta round on April 7th. Yes, it's an 8-week group program where we will walk through exactly what this episode is all about. The strategic positioning piece, the attraction and discoverability piece, and the audit work that shows what's really blocking your growth. And because this is a beta round, everyone who joins gets a personal audit of their show's search foundation before we even start. I'll go through your title, your description, and the metadata and deliver my findings straight to you via a Loom video. And that is available to the beta member only as a bonus that won't be included in future rounds. And I'm super excited. This group will be small. The pricing will be reflecting that it is a beta round and that the waitlist is now open. So if you've been podcasting for a while and you are done trying to figure out this podcasting business all by yourself, the link is in the show notes. I would love to have you. And hey, next week we are getting even more specific I'm going to show you how to really track what's converting in your podcast so you can stop guessing and start making decisions based on real data. You're going to want to catch that one. And thanks for being here. I genuinely appreciate you coming and tuning in each and every week. If this episode hit home, make sure you share it with that podcaster friend who's been also creating great content and wondering why their show's not growing. And remember, keep your podcast purposeful, keep being strategic, and above all else, keep that growth seamless. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.